And that's when we knew, that moment, when he became president.
No, that's me saying that. That's when we knew.
Dude,
all fucked up.
You know what? Dude, you know what I started doing as I got back from my vacation? Just to gear up, to get in the zone for this election, I started watching House of Cards again.
Oh,
I'm just watching
talking about a guy who's in trouble right now, Spacey.
Yeah.
For touching boys.
Well, he wasn't on the last season. That's over now.
That his whole life.
Yeah, I mean, he's been...
All right, we're going live.
His whole life.
Told you, man.
Everyone's a pervert.
They like the fresh meat, man.
Everyone's a pervert in Hollywood.
We are live, coming at you.
Live, folks.
We were talking about some stuff, and now we're talking about some different stuff. We were talking about some stuff, and now we're talking about some different stuff. We were talking about some stuff, and now we're talking about some different stuff. We were talking about some stuff, and now we're talking about some different stuff. We were talking about some stuff.
All right, let me turn on my camera here. All right, this will be a great episode, folks. This will be money.
Rocking the more love swag here. I love these shirts the best, dude. The champion.
I'm all about the new zip-ups, dog.
Here's what we should do, though. Whatever products are the most popular, we need to offer all three logos on them. So this needs to have the other two logos as well. Like if whatever ends up being the most popular, we should just have less products and have more options for those.
Hello, folks. We are live here in the Weirman Media Studios again.
You know what I'm saying?
Thinking of you. I know it's what day is it here today? Tuesday, right?
Tuesday.
Folks? That Sunday football game was terrible. I know I'm a Vikings fan, but that was ugly. They couldn't stop.
It was beautiful.
They couldn't stop a single thing. So, yeah, I just want to touch on that and how that was ugly to watch. But ultimately, as the older I've gotten, the less I've become upset with the Vikings losing.
Yeah.
The less if you think about the majority of sports teams, 31 of the 32 every year fall short of the goal. And it's like, oh.
And half of those never make the playoffs.
And it's like they always end up saying, oh, we'll do it next year. We'll get it next year. We'll get it next year. It's just kind of like I don't know. It's kind of a bullshit.
As long as Bill Belichick's coaching the Patriots, you won't get it next year.
But yeah.
Because they're going to go all the way this year again.
I actually turned 29 on Sunday, so I'm getting old, folks. But ultimately, we're live at Weirman Media Studios. We're thinking of you, and it is 4:35 p.m., and we were thinking of an episode that would bring value to others, and we came up with the idea of love solves all problems and the importance and power of love and how it has an impact on other people and how it can help change not only our relationships, but like the world and the impact it has at scale. So I think love solves all problems. That's what More Love Nation, the clothing line we have. My brother talks about it all the time, and it's our brand, it's our website, it's the More Love movement. It's more compassion, more empathy, more kindness, and that's what leads to more unity and cooperation and so forth. So, how are you doing today, Zaya?
Doing good.
Doing good, real good.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, and I think the thing is, it's a vague term, and people...
Thanks for being with us.
People have good intentions when they want to carry love, and everyone practices a different way. Like, for example, I think sometimes parents love their kids, but they just keep enabling them and giving them whatever they want, and they never say no. So that was our mom's way of loving us, but it's not necessarily the greatest. So I think when it comes to practicing love, it's about the balance of, like, the things my brother mentioned: compassion, empathy, unity. Those are the principles that need to be a part of that conversation, as well as honesty and accountability. And it needs to be used with language that isn't negative and that isn't language that brings division. It brings unity and it shows love and compassion. And I think how I can do that is always listen and try to put myself in that person's shoes. And that's what I think is key. I also will say, there's people that are really passionate about certain subjects, like with stuff with religion and race and politics, and I think that's what makes it difficult for people to actually do this, because they have so much bias or so much anger or passion that their emotions get caught up in this. And for me, if I'm emotionally stable, I'm better able to do this, whether it's dealing with a family member or a coworker or a friend or another person in recovery, or dealing with another business person or a customer. Like, I need to be emotionally stable. If I'm not emotionally stable, I will get off kilter on one of the sides, where I'll either not care at all, or I'll be really aggressive and start being attacking, or not bringing unity and compassion and love. And I think for me, that's the key. So my responsibility is when I'm coming into a simple situation, making sure I'm coming into it with that intent and with that. Because truly love brings unity. That's what it's all about. It's trying to unite people. Anytime you're doing something when you're attacking someone or bringing division, it's not practicing those principles at all.
Yeah, so and I just want to touch on Yuval Harari's book I mention all the time, and what he says is that in order for us to thrive and sustain as a species, we have to cooperate and work together flexibly. And the number one most important factor for us to do that is for us to share our realities and our truths and our stories in a vulnerable, authentic fashion so that we can connect and we can come together. And to me, that connects directly with love. Because like if I'm sharing my story, if you think about ego keeps us from connecting to other people. Because if I don't share my story in a vulnerable, authentic fashion in hopes of connecting with others and working together with other people to bring unity via love and compassion and empathy and kindness, like all the stuff you just said, I think it comes back to ego as well, because ego keeps us from leaning into our stories, which then builds us and opens us up to those relationships. Because the more you lean into your stories that you've experienced and the experiences you've had in life, like someone that's had a drug addiction or someone that's had abuse or someone that's had surgeries or someone that's been in a car accident or someone that survived anything, you name it, jail time, all these things, the more you lean into them, the more it opens you up to authentic connection to other human beings, which then connects to empathy, kindness, compassion, love, and working together flexibly. That's why I think it's super interesting, and that's why I just wanted to mention Yuval Harari's books. I just like to touch on that over and over again, how important that is.
Yeah, so it's two sides that you have to share, like my brother was saying, to storytelling, but at the same time, you need to listen to the other person and respect them, allow them to express how they feel, and listen to them, and then try to listen to what they're saying and regurgitate that back. A lot of times people aren't just heard. Everyone wants to just like assume things. And for me, it's about connecting. It's about storytelling. I think that's the root cause of it. Because if we don't do that, we can't connect. 1. 2, then I have to be willing to listen to other people do the same. I can't just tell my story, never listen to other people share their story. And I have to be able to listen and see what they want to do. A lot of times when I'm trying to help someone and practice this in my life, I let them talk and I rephrase what they're saying. I say, so it sounds like you're telling me this is how you feel, this is what you want to do. And they go, yeah. And I go, okay. And then I go, what do you want to do about this? I let them decide. And then I will give my input. I won't control them, but I will be honest with them. If I think it's a bad idea, I'm going to say, hey, man, I don't think it's a good idea. This is your life. But I'm going to suggest that you do this. You have the right to do that, but I'm always going to give them the ability to suggest what they want to do and listen. And then even if they don't agree with me, I'm going to support them and say, hey, you know what? I support you because I love you, even though you necessarily aren't doing what I think is best. But that's how I meet that person where they're at. Sometimes the other person's choice works out great, and I was wrong. Then if it doesn't work out great, their choice didn't work out, then they can come back to me, but I don't judge them. I go, let's come up with another game plan. What do you want to do now? Like, this is what I do every day when I'm helping people in recovery. Yeah. So if you take that same principle by giving people the autonomy when they're in recovery and dealing with their addiction and mental health to choose what they want to do while also holding them accountable, it creates that level of trust there where you're not controlling them, but you're also not feeding into their fantasy and just being like, yeah, you're doing everything, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not just saying if it's a bad idea, you're going to tell them. You know, I come up with bad ideas and I need to bounce around other people around me to get their insight. But at the end of the day, it is their life that they get to choose to do no matter who the person is. And my job is to listen to them and help them find their own happiness.
So I think that's a great point, what you're saying. It's really interesting because I recently did an episode on my podcast called Ego is the Enemy. And it's a book I just recently read the keynotes on because, once again, I don't believe in reading books. It's an interesting concept. Reading books, I think a lot of people do it to escape in the story as opposed to just deduct the knowledge from the book and the keynotes. But I read Ego is the Enemy, and it's a great point that if you really care and love and are compassionate for other people and have empathy, the level at which you tolerate others and listen directly correlates with what you just said. I agree 100%. If you're not listening to the wants, needs, and desires of your relationships and the people at the other end of that relationship, you're not really caring truly at the end of the day. You have to listen to their wants, needs, and desires. But in the book, Ego is the Enemy, without an accurate self-awareness of oneself and abilities compared to others, we don't have an ability to connect to others. Because listen, if I can't assess and understand my abilities and my shortcomings or my defects, I'm going to have an inability to connect to others and understand their needs, wants, and desires. So once you realize that, that's really big.
That pretty much sums up addiction and mental health.
And that's
why it's really difficult to help people with that, because they still don't know themselves, and you try to help them, and they constantly are changing and evolving and sporadic. It's really difficult to meet someone where they're at because they're always changing. You don't know who they are. They don't know who they are. They can't connect to you. They're not aware of any of that. So it makes it really difficult with that fluid change.
Hey, Henry, thanks for being with us. Yes, Isaiah. So without an accurate accounting of our own abilities compared to others, what we have is not confidence, but delusion. How are we supposed to reach, motivate, or lead other people if we can't relate to their needs or understand their wants, needs, or desires? That is ego. Ego keeps us from understanding that because we don't share our story. But once we egotistically let go and detach from self, we're then capable of neutrally assessing ourselves and looking at our shortcomings and having a understanding of our strengths, our weaknesses, but also our faults. And then we can move forward and start to understand the other people's wants, needs, and desires, because egotistically we've detached from ourselves.
But it really starts with just like not judging them too. So like all that you said is summing up that in order to do all that you're talking about is how you get to the point of not judging. Like if you're not willing to look at yourself, how are you going to not do that with someone else? So for me, because I know how flawed I am.
Thanks, Henry, for being with us, man.
Because the more I work on myself and I'm aware of myself, I realize I'm flawed tremendously. So it gives me more compassion towards someone else. If I think I'm fucking Mr. Perfect and I got my shit together, and I start taking other people's inventory, that is not good. That is unhealthy. Nope. I find myself not being in a good place and being compassionate. The more I focus on my own side of the street and only me, it makes me realize how flawed I am, which makes it easier for me to have that same open-mindedness to another person. That's the key. That's what people have it all backwards. That's the one thing I truly believe. This is what makes people backwards. Is they keep focusing on other people. The more you look at yourself and you work on yourself, you'll realize how flawed you are. And the more you realize how flawed you are, the more compassion you'll touch someone else because they're flawed. And then once you know the amount of effort it takes to change by working on yourself, if someone's not working on themselves, you can't expect them to do more than what they're already doing. That's how you meet people where they're at. Like, I can judge by someone's emotional stability based on how hard they work on themselves. The harder I work on myself, the more stable and aware I have. When I stop working on myself, I end up start thinking about all this other shit, and I stop being fucking aware, and I stop caring, and I start being Mr. Judgmental, and I go negative. So for me, it's all relative to the work that I'm doing with myself. And that is what gives me the compassion, because of the humility of recognizing that I'm not Mr. fucking hotshot.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not fucking hotshot. Like, yeah, it doesn't mean you don't want to look at the good things in you. So it's not like negative or positive. I don't want you to shame yourself, because I think shaming is really bad. So when I say I'm flawed, I want to be like, you're a piece of shit sinner. It's just recognizing that I have good and bad. And just looking at a fact-finding thing that as a human, I have good and bad.
Totally. That is healthy. That is detachment from self, and that is a self-building like structure that is completely repeatable and trainable and scalable. Like, but it's impossible to do that if you can't detach from your own self.
Yeah, and the number one question I ask myself, which I think most people don't do this, and that's a generalization. But any time I start attacking someone and talking about someone else in any way that's not positive, then they're not there in any capacity, I ask myself, who am I to judge? Who the fuck am I to judge?
You're right. Judging is a great example.
Who the fuck and I say this to anyone right now, who the fuck are you to judge someone? Nobody has any right to do that. I think it's important to tell people how you make them feel, your own feelings and how they affect you. I'm not saying that. But to condemn someone and put them down, that's righteousness. And that's like, no one, I don't care who you are. And if you are better than someone and you're living a better life because of that, like, that's fucked up that you're putting someone down like that versus helping them. So that's the key to leadership here. So what we're talking about, this principle here, is the key to leadership because it's all rooted in humility.
It is the key to leadership.
Because it's rooted in humility because
100%.
You recognize you're no better or less than, and the only reason that you may have gotten to that point is because you've realized you've worked so hard on yourself to get there, and you've had people that have loved you and supported you along the way. That's the key. So that's what's made me work in recovery is I am never alone. I have a network of people in recovery that I know I'm never alone. I'm always loved and I'm always supported. They don't live my life for me though. They don't enable me. I'm self-supporting. They don't just enable me and do stuff for me. I have to meet them and put in the work and meet them halfway. You know what I mean? Like that's the key. But at the end of the day, if I don't have a network, I will feel alone. So I think the key is building a group of people around yourself that give you the love and support. It can be anybody. It really can. But to me, it starts with humility. Like, if I'm not willing to look at myself...
Studious self-assessment is the antidote to ego, is what the book said. So these are the 3 key points the book, The Ego is the Enemy, touches on, if you didn't hear my recent podcast. And I think this is a great topic for love, because in order to love others and connect to others, it requires the removal of ego. Ego is what keeps us from connecting to others. That's why I'm leaning into it so much. And it said, the top 3 most important things it said was, number 1, I'm everything and I'm nothing. Understanding that you have incredible value to bring forward, but in the grand scheme of the world and the universe and the life of the universe, we are nothing. So that's really a big understanding. Number 2, it said adjusting our attitude, which the majority of time is skewed. And I've said number 3, most of what you think you know or most of what you learned in books is wrong or out of date. And that's really interesting 3 points to me. Like, I think that's huge when it comes to being able to connect to others and removing ego.
Yeah, I mean, I simplify it though. It's just like it's about sharing your story and then listening to their story and their pain. It's really that's what it's rooted in, and
Totally.
doing that in a non-judgmental way.
Which is what we talk about all the time.
It's rooted that, and then also not judging other people's stories. Like, I can't share my story and then sit there and judge someone else when they're doing it. It's rooted in not judging. Doesn't mean I'm not being honest with someone. Like, if someone's making me feel a certain way and I feel like they're treating me like a piece of shit, of course you have the right to say that to someone and say, hey, your actions are doing this way. But we're not going to sit there. The reason why I think it's important because we just get a lot of people on social media right now with all these topics and stuff going on where everyone is attacking people. And it's like, dude, I'm looking at all this like, who the fuck are all of these people to act like they're Mr. Know-It-All and Mr. Right and they're better than... It's just like, it's like, wow, man. It's like, it's tough to be around people that aren't doing that. Like, when people are attacking other people and thinking that their way is better, it's really not fun to be around. What is fun is being around open-minded people that are really willing and able and vulnerable just to share everyone's story and connect. It's not as difficult as we make it. It really isn't.
So here's the thing I think about with love, all right? So if someone feels alone and they feel like they're disconnected and not attached to something, a big part of life is feeling connected to others and feeling a part of and involved with something. And I think this correlates directly back to what I said about ego, because if you want to connect to others and you want to feel a part of something, you have to be non-self-absorbed, and you have to have some self-awareness to understand that you, in order to connect to others and feel a part of something, you have to come forward and take the actions and be a little humble and replace ego with humility and action. And I think that's the answer that we talk about so much. But I think in the book, one of the other thing I want to mention is it mentioned humble in our aspirations, gracious in success, and resilient in failure. And that is key, is what they talk about is overcoming ego so that we can aspire, we can succeed, and we can sustain through failure. Like, a lot of people don't realize that when we are destroyed by, like, if failure takes its course, we're going to have failures in life. And if you are consumed with ego and you fail, it is absolutely traumatic, because it's the complete perfectionist of someone that leads them to be egotistical. Ego is perfect. It is, I can't be inexact, I can't be imperfect, I can't be bad, I can't be average, and if I fail, I'm a complete worthless human being. And I think that's really interesting in the book when I read that, is understanding the fortitude that we can develop, that we can sustain through failure. And I think that's really interesting. I never realized how much this correlated to love and ego and connecting to others until I read that book, and that's really profound for me. But also, being able to tolerate others, I've learned the older I get. I used to not tolerate other people at all, but understanding tolerance equates to love is a big thing for me as well.
Yeah, love and tolerance is the code. That's how I live by. And how we do that is by respecting others. Always giving someone the ability to talk, the ability to express themselves, the ability to meet them where they're at, the ability to not attack or not judge them. And also, what I think is key with the ego that my brother talks about is the ego doesn't go away. The ego will never go away. Never. So it's not like you figure all this out and you just like, oh, I figured out the ego and I'm just good now. It's like, no, every day I wake up, I have to do this. What I did yesterday is irrelevant to my humility and my compassion and love and unity today. I can't do this one day and not do it the other day.
But here's the key to Bucksetti. You're right, Zaya. But it says it's key to start young. Listen, it says when the number one most important factor is to suppress ego early before bad habits take hold, replacing temptations of ego with humility and discipline and fortitude, which is really interesting because if you look at our world, if we had our kids start gaining the self-awareness and following these growth steps at a younger age, I think that would help prevent these bad habits from taking place. And that really opened my eyes when I read that. It's like, that makes total sense.
That's why sports.
Because bad habits take place.
That's why sports are so key. Because you get kids in sports.
And parenting, quality parenting. I said it the other day. Quality parenting is the biggest advantage in life.
Yeah, because if you have parents that are teaching you this at a very young age and instilling it in you,
they're instilling discipline. They're instilling humility.
It's going to be easier to just keep that moving forward. I agree.
Exactly.
But it also, if your school systems are teaching that too, that'd be nice. So if you got parents, teachers, and coaches all doing it, then the kid is surrounded by it. They have no outlet to get away from it.
Yeah, but that's just what you're talking about is a scapegoat for lack of quality parenting.
Yeah, by far, parents have the biggest influence.
The older I get, the more I realize it. When I see kids that are 9, 10 years old with healthy parents that are doctors or surgeons or lawyers, and they're teaching them discipline, they're teaching them humility, they're giving them guidance, they're giving them direction, they're giving them purpose, they're building up their self-confidence, which to me, I think self-confidence is one of the most undervalued tools and assets someone can have, because if I have self-confidence, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or what society thinks. I'm comfortable in my skin being different, and I'm comfortable taking a different path and being an outlier. Whereas all these other people raise their kids to be accepted by society, and they don't necessarily build up their humility and their discipline and their fortitude and so forth. And then these kids are afraid to be themselves and pursue their dreams because they have to do what everyone else is doing, which is go to college and spend money on a single-family home and be in massive debt, and because they're not comfortable in their own skin. I think self-awareness and all these things comes from quality parenting.
Yeah, but you gotta have empathy for parents, because a lot of times parents just parent the way they were parented. It's passed down. I'm not making an excuse. I think parents need to be held accountable a little bit more, like we're talking about here, and I know you definitely feel that way. But at the same time, parenting isn't easy, dude. And if you're not a parent and I'm not a parent, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I fucking will be the best parent.
That's why I'm 29 years old and haven't had a kid.
If I had 3 kids right now, dude, if I had 3 kids, or any time, I don't care if I'm 40, once I have, dude, having 3 kids, fucking that, and if your kids are knuckleheads like me, that's not easy, dude, to have 3 kids.
Knuckleheads like him. Knuckleheads like him and us.
Like parenting, but at the same time, that is the parent's job to learn how to grow within parenting. And I think what happens, it's funny, I think as parents age and their kids age, it just happens over time eventually. It just should happen way younger, unfortunately. Like, you want that to happen throughout the process. But what happens is a lot of times parents' relationship with their kids gets broken, and usually later in life is when it gets, because the ego is removing. People get more humble. The dad, the son, the brother, the grandma, even brothers and sisters are the same way. They end up coming back together, and I feel like that has to do with humility. But early on, I feel like parents aren't given enough tools necessarily.
Really? That's interesting. Let's talk more about that. Parents aren't given enough tools.
I feel like,
but they have enough but they're capable enough to make a decision to selfishly have unprotected sex and get pregnant and have a kid, but then not accept the responsibilities after it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to justify that at all. I'm just saying, though, I like how we're talking about this, because the dialogue is what starts awareness, which leads to equipping parents with more tools. How we can...
Or people being aware that they're not equipped and not having the children or irresponsible, selfish sex.
Of course. But come on, who are you to judge? Like, you've never had irresponsible, selfish sex?
I've had lots of sex, but I've never once got a woman pregnant because I don't do certain things. What
don't you do? You don't do what? You could have very easily gotten a woman pregnant.
I don't finish inside women.
You never have.
In a serious long-term relationship where I would be
okay,
open.
Again, you're just lucky. I'm just lucky, so I'm not here to judge someone.
I'm not judging anyone.
Yeah, you are.
I'm talking about a concept,
you're
not
judging
personalities.
You're judging them.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about principles over personalities. principles over
The
personality.
language you used was selfish people having sex with other
There's
people.
no act of life that is more selfish than unprotected sex, where then there's a child born into a life of stricken circumstances that has no guidance, no direction, no support, and no quality parenting. That child has been born into a situation and circumstance where he is now handcuffed for the rest of his life or her life and lacks direction, lacks support, and lacks any kind of connection, lacks any kind of purpose, self-confidence, and any of this discipline, structure. I have a brother who's virtually been an example of this, who's never once, if you think about love, he's never felt a part of anything. Could you imagine being mentally ill, not having great quality parenting, being a drug addict who hears voices, bipolar, is schizoaffecta, and most of your life the state is what you feel a part of. The state tells you what to do, where to do it, and how to do it, and the state controls you. To me, when I think of intimate connections and feeling important and involved with something, I need to be close to it. The most intimate relationships I've ever had in my life, I'm daily, consistently showing up and building a relationship.
Who have you done that with in your life?
Indira Benitez and my mother.
Yeah, exactly.
I gave up my whole childhood for my mother.
Now, bringing back to the point of parenting, though.
I just gave you two examples, and
Okay, but we're kind of going about parenting. It's kind of a different topic.
No, this is exactly. I'm leaning into.
But I was talking about.
In order to love someone.
But you never let me finish. I was talking about parenting with tools. So I agree it's selfish, but what I'm saying is you're talking about the problem. I'm not a problem-oriented individual.
But the part of the
let me talk. You
part of the
interrupted
auditing
me.
process is that.
You sure like to interrupt people.
In order to audit something, you have to look at the problem.
Okay, we've already discussed the problem, and I'm trying to talk about the solution. Let me talk. Yeah, we've talked about parenting and kids fucking people and having kids many times.
I'm talking about. No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is what I think we could do, because I know what you're saying is a problem, and I agree with you. We need then to equip these parents with more tools to do that. Now, I think the best solution is just to tell people to stop having sex. The reality is it's not going to happen.
No.
What we can do is offer more protective sex and then offer people better educational programs on how to be a better parent, combining these tools that we're talking about. So us talking about this is the solution. But I also feel like it can be more programs created to offer these people some tools to how to do that. Because if you don't know where the resources are as a parent, how are you supposed to do that even if you want to? That's my solution that I was trying to bring it back to. That's my point. That's all I wanted to say about the parenting with the tools when I was talking about that, when you went to the problem.
I'm talking about the fact that you can't love someone from afar. You can't have an intense feeling of deep, intimate connection and affection with great interest and pleasure in something together without consistently spending time in the trenches of life together. If I'm just calling someone from the other end of the phone, the level at which I love someone directly correlates with the level at which I tolerate them. The level at which I love someone directly correlates with the level at which I consistently show up for them in their life. The level at which I love someone or care about someone.
Who do you do that for? I got to ask yourself that in your own question, though.
I've done it throughout my life. I can give you countless occasions. I lived in Hawaii, and a Subaru was homeless, and there was consistent day in, day out, where I would go spend times with the homeless because I've been homeless throughout my life, and I would start just spending time with the homeless guys, buying them lunch and food and developing relationships because I have appreciation for being around people that come from nothing or come from very little because they're so much more appreciative and grateful. So I agree. That's great. Had many homeless people and Hawaiian friends in Hawaii. Shout out to my Hawaiian brothers and sisters on the beaches that are homeless. Countless would work out on the beach and talk to them and have relationships with them because I learned a lot from those people and their great appreciation for such a simple life.
So then if you're saying that, then you kind of it kind of sounds hypocritical of someone who just sits on the computer and does social media all day.
I'm reaching more people than I ever could.
So my point, you don't have to be there physically, though. You just said you have to be in the trenches with them. So how is not being online what we're doing not the same thing?
That's exactly a great point. It's the scale, right? It's the top of the funnel. So exactly right. This is a great topic and great point. The funnel, the intimate connection and the depth. This is the top of the funnel. I can reach people with the content and the concepts and share it at the top of the funnel at scale, but for me to connect more deeply with them, I need to have Zoom calls, I need to have in-person flights and meetings, and develop relationships that lead to us connecting and doing business.
It really comes down to
friends.
effort is what I'm trying to say.
But at the end of the day, I can't do this and just expect it to produce a bunch of stuff without it leading to more of an intimate relationship.
But you were trying to say about you have to be, you were trying to make a point where you're acting like you have to be with someone physically.
There's a direct correlation to have an intimate love and connection and affection with one another where you do have to spend time together together consistently.
At some point, but you can't say that's guaranteed. There are people that love each other that don't spend all the time with each other. There's people that have relationships where they deeply love someone and they see him once a week or once a month.
So what do you describe as love? What's your opinion? How can you love someone? So if I'm calling someone from a jail phone, I can love you?
Of course you can
I
still
want to
love
hear your
someone who's in
perspective.
jail.
Give me your perspective, Zay, on what you think love is.
Love is about honesty. Love is about appreciation. Love is about respect. Love is about intimacy. Love is about effort. Love is about not being judgmental towards someone. Love is really, at the end of the day, at the core, is just doing what you can to be there for that person, and it looks different at different times in different people's lives. The main thing is not just ignore someone. If you're ignoring someone completely, that's not love. As far as how often you spend time with someone, that's such a subjective thing, what define love, because everyone has their own level of how much space they like. Everyone has their own level of what they're comfortable with.
Thanks, Dylan. I can't wait to answer
For me,
that.
I'm someone who, it comes down to those things I listed. It comes down to intimacy, which is rooted in honesty. It comes down into effort and respect. And I have my own level of respect, my own level of my boundaries of what I'm comfortable doing. And it's not one-sided. It's not one person always putting in the effort and giving. It takes two to tango, as they say. And if one person is the one always giving and they're never receiving, and the other person's never really being grateful, then that's not really love, in my opinion. That can be considered lust, and that can also be considered someone that's using you. So it's a fine line when you get into that. But usually true love is a mutual thing. Two people are meeting in the middle. It's not lopsided.
All right, I hear you.
But it's really, at the end of the day, though, it's just effort. I believe because we're so flawed, if someone's showing up and doing their best as they can, and you can tell they are, and they're not fucking, no one's going to show up perfectly, but I can tell when someone cares versus someone who doesn't care and is ignoring you. So at the end of the day, if someone's trying to do their best, even if it might not be someone else's best, that's love. Like, it's ugly sometimes. It's not messy. It's not perfect. Doesn't mean the person even fucking helps you, but they're not ignoring you. They're showing up to the best of their ability. And it looks different with everyone.
The best of their ability. That's a great point you just made. It's a great point.
And some people can only show up.
Someone that's schizophrenic or bipolar and really they have a hard time showing up. They're doing the best they can, right?
Of course, you have to be really compassionate with people. Again, addiction and mental health is an extreme example of all this, and it's difficult to do this with people because they can't connect. So it's way more difficult.
So you just touched on it, though. You said all those things. I just want to interject. To me, I think intimacy is the ability to connect to others on an intimate, deep, emotional, human level. It's the ability for us to open up and share our story and connect with people in a vulnerable way, in an authentic way. And I think this is the exact reason why people, like some people I know that are so egotistical that they have a hard time sharing their stories and talking about their fuck-ups and talking about their failures, because they don't think they've ever done anything wrong. They think they're perfect. I think ego is the exact issue. I think it's love or ego. It's you either live in love and fear. You either live in fear and insecurities and ego, or you live in love. It's one or the other. You can't be in between. There's no gray space. Either I'm living in love or I'm living in fear, insecurities, and ego. And it's one or the other.
But one thing, I will make a good point, and I don't think you need to physically, I think we want physical touch, but you don't need to be there all the time. Like, my biggest people in my life that I love, and I think this is the backup why I think it's important to do social media. I don't have to physically be there. I can get super influenced and love someone and they have an amazing impact on my life, and I've never even met them. Through their books, through their music, like through their online social media. But you just got done
saying effort's the priority, is one of the most important things, and presence is the primary example.
Yeah, I'm just giving you an
presence is the primary example of effort.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to bring up to the big picture is why to storytelling. Like, of course, on an intimate level, if you have someone you know personally, they should be in your life. But I want to be clear that that's why I believe in music and film and storytelling and social media so much, that you can have a vast impact and connect and love with people without even really meeting them. I do think having human touch and connection and being present next to someone makes it even more impactful. So I think it's a balance of all that. But I do believe, catering back into More Love Nation and Women Reader, why we're doing, that storytelling is the best way to do that.
Yes, that summarizes everything that we're talking about.
If you can't get with someone personally, that's okay. Sometimes that's the reality. But effort is showing up in many different ways. If you're ignoring someone, you're never going to see them personally. That's different. But you can't always be physically with someone. But if you're making the effort to FaceTime or do a podcast or call them or email them or send them something in the mail, that's love still.
Totally.
And what we're doing is love. And that's why artist is love. Like writing a painting is love. Like a painting can communicate love. Any form of art is the best way to connect through love, in my opinion.
But it makes sense because it's all about connection, is what you just said, and I agree with everything you just said. And the ultimate leadership branding is what we just talked about on another episode. It's storytelling. It's leaning into our stories, our vulnerabilities, our shortcomings, and our defects, and our inexactness, and our imperfections, and our profile, and sharing it at scale, because that's what leads us to connect with others. That's where we connect with other human beings, and that's how we can connect with others and work together and develop a group of people that are working together cooperatively and flexibly. But ultimately, that's exactly why I keep leaning into the ego.
But it comes to effort too, I think.
But ultimately,
just effort, dude. It means a lot.
But ultimately, the people that are consumed with ego, like I know a certain individual, I'm not going to state their name, but they individually have a very hard time having relationships and connecting with other humans on an intimate level because they are so egotistical.
That's your opinion, though.
If you're consumed with ego, you're incapable. No, actually, the book Ego of Enemy states it's impossible. If you're consumed by ego.
But you're saying you think someone struggles with it. They might not think that. They might have friends that they don't struggle with.
But if an individual is completely consumed with ego, they are incapable of connecting
with
others.
You're making a subjective observation and opinion based on an individual.
So if there's an individual in the world that can't connect with others,
how do you know they can't connect with others? You're stating you think they can't.
Their problem, I'm saying, let's make up a fictional character.
Well, let's talk about mental illness, because that's what I think you're talking about.
There's a human world.
You're talking about mental illness, right?
No, I'm talking about people or parents that are unable to provide for their children or support their children because they're consumed by themselves.
Well, first of all, a child is not someone who's 30. First of all.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, in general, the concepts. A parent that is incapable of providing for their children and being a guidance and being a compass for them, a moral compass, a life compass, a supportive compass, a loving compass, and one that is egotistically consumed by themselves and what they do, where they do it, how they spend their time, how long they spend their time doing something, because they don't care about their child because they're consumed with ego.
Yeah, but
I'm not talking about any subjectiveness.
It sounds like you're talking about your dad.
Nope. That's not at all what I'm doing.
As you are, and you act like your dad doesn't care about his son.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that. You just did that. You
you
just completely went there with that.
That's exactly what you're talking about.
No, it isn't. You just did that, not me.
So that's not who you're referring to?
No, it is not. I'm making a general statement about people with children. And that.
You're also, again, judging someone because you're acting like someone doesn't care.
No, I'm not talking about my father.
No, but anyone you're just talking about, how do you know someone doesn't care about someone? You're taking someone else's inventory. That's all subjective. None of that's factual.
Everything you just said contradicts that. If they're not present and they're not putting in effort and they're unable,
you're defining what effort is.
You just contradicted everything you just said. If they're not doing any of those things that you just said and they're not present and they're not putting in effort, they don't love that person.
If they're ignoring them, correct.
So if they're not showing up in their life on a daily basis, they're not putting in effort on a daily basis.
If there is no effort at all, it means they never talk to the person, they never see them, and they just ignore them.
That's like the most minuscule micro factor. We're talking macro here.
Dude, that's effort.
Talking to someone on the phone
effort.
Is not effort.
Yeah, it is.
You call effort.
That's what you do all day. You talk on a computer and talk on a phone. How is that not effort?
So you're saying...
So what you're doing is an effort trying to connect to people? You sound very hypocritical right now. That's fucking effort.
I'm putting in effort to connect to people.
That's the same fucking thing if I'm calling someone every day. I call my sponsor. That's effort.
There's no way I would look at this and say I'm putting in a ton of effort.
Sounds like a bunch of bullshit.
I could never sit here and say I love the people at the other end of this. That is complete bullshit if I say I love you.
You couldn't love someone?
From the other end of this, I don't know you. Your wants, needs, or desires.
If you met them, you can say that. Yeah, if you've met them.
If I met them in person and started to connect with them and develop a relationship, that's correct.
You act like all the...
But none of the people...
You make no sense.
None of the people...
I talk to people every day that I fucking love, but because I don't see them every day, I'm not making a fucking effort.
It's hard to have an intimate relationship.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I talk to people that have very intimate relationships every fucking day.
If you're talking to someone in Hawaii over the phone for 5 to 10 minutes a day, you can't love that person.
Yeah, I can.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
100%. You're not putting an effort to be present.
You're talking out of your ass right now.
You're not putting an effort to...
Talking out of your ass right now.
Nope, you can't.
I can't love someone that lives in Hawaii if I call them every day because I don't live in Hawaii.
You can care.
Think about that yourself logically. No, your ego is through the roof right now that you're wrong.
It isn't.
Yeah, it is.
No, it isn't.
Your statement you just made is, I can't love someone who lives in Hawaii if I call them every day.
Yep.
Facts.
That's not loving someone.
No, that's a judgment. That's not a fact. Your
That's not
opinion
loving
is
someone.
if I call someone every day, it's not making
Based on the
effort.
concepts that we just talked
I
about,
call
it is
people
not
every
loving
day that
someone.
I love.
That
It's
is not-
effort.
yes, you love them, but that's not loving them.
I love my grandpa and I go visit him. I don't fucking see him every day. I call him on the phone and visit him a few times a year. I fucking love my grandpa. Because I don't visit my grandpa and put an effort to go see him every fucking week, that's not effort.
If I really love someone, that's what I'm saying. Yes, there is a correlation.
It just sounds
there.
like a bunch of bullshit.
I'm not saying you don't love someone because
That's
of
what you
that.
just said.
No, I'm not. I'm saying
You just said if I call someone in Hawaii every day, I can't love them.
Yes,
Because I
that's-
only talk to them for 10 minutes a day.
yes. Let me explain.
Yes, I can love
you
them.
Can stop screaming. I can explain. I can explain what I just said.
Yep.
You won't. Loving someone. I can love someone. I can personally think I love someone, and I love you because you're my someone I love. In my head, in my mind, in my reality, I love you. But a simple phone call on their end makes it seem like I care because I could care.
How many people do
Let
you
me
talk
finish.
to every day of your life?
Let me finish.
That you call them and ask them how their day is?
I spend my whole day doing that.
Who?
My whole day. I can make a list of it today. I messaged Derek Smith. I messaged Michael Pierce from the hostel. I messaged Bob Monahan. I messaged Morgan LaBelle, my cousin.
That doesn't count. You don't ever hang out with your cousin. When's the last time you hung out with your cousin? That
That's
doesn't
what
count.
I'm saying.
You can't love
You
her.
have to let me
You
explain.
can't love her.
You won't let me explain.
Go.
No, you just keep screaming.
I'm not screaming right now.
You just did it 3 times in a row. The level at which I love someone, there's a direct correlation to the level at which amount of time I spend with them, no doubt.
So who do you love that you
once
actually
again,
spend a
just
lot of time
you just
with?
Interrupted again.
Go.
You, that's the 3rd time in a row you've interrupted.
You've
me.
interrupted me at least 3 times in this episode too, so. I'm just doing what you do to me.
The level at which I love someone. For me, I've loved my mother and I've loved Indira. I would have spent the rest of my life with someone I love. And I can sit and call someone and care about them. And I can show my acknowledgement that I care and I'm compassionate and I care about them and I'm thinking about them. That is showing love. But that's not saying I don't love them. My point is, I can love someone and think I love them and show them that kindness and compassion that I'm thinking of them, and that is showing love to a certain extent. But what I'm talking about is a deeper, intimate connection where it's more about presence. It's more about being present with that individual and spending time with them and showing them, giving your time and giving them your effort. Because nothing is more loving and intimate than me giving my presence and time and energy to you. That's all I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that you can't love someone.
That's what you said though. That's what started all of
You
this.
can't. It's really difficult.
That's the only reason why I said that, because you told me I can't love someone in Hawaii who doesn't, because I.
If I've never spent a single minute with someone in their life, physically present, never.
That's not
And
what
then-
we're talking about.
Yes, I am. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a phone relationship. That's what I'm talking about.
But I've still met them in person.
If I've never spent individual time with you on an intimate level, face to face or in person,
That's not what I'm talking
and our
about, though.
relationship is based on the phone, that is not an intimate, loving relationship to me in any way.
Yeah, but what if I only see that person 2 or 3 times a year?
That's not an intimate, loving relationship to me. You can still love that person, but that is
And be
not
completely
to me.
intimate.
You can love them still, but I don't think you can be loving and intimate.
I think you can. The whole point I'm trying to make is you're trying to act like you're right or wrong, and it's like it's just an opinion. You're saying you don't believe that, but you told me I
No,
can't
it's
love
not.
someone. You're telling me how I can't love
No,
someone,
I'm not
which
telling
is
you
false.
anything.
But that's what you just said. It's your opinion. So you're just stating an opinion that you
Everything
don't think.
I states that.
Yeah, but you stated that as a fact.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
Everything I say, I believe in, folks.
But
And
you
I'm
said
passionate and I support it.
you didn't say, in
And
my
it-
opinion,
and it
Isaac.
constantly
I don't think
changes.
that's love. You said, Isaac, you can't love someone in Hawaii that you only talk to 10 minutes a
You
day.
cannot love someone, in my perspective, from the phone. Having a phone relationship is not love and intimacy.
So how often do you have to be with someone for you to consider it love?
You have to consistently put an effort and be
What
present in their
does
life.
that mean? Every day, once a week,
Being
once a day,
present.
once a month?
I'm just talking about consistently being present in their life.
But that's a very vague statement.
Yes, I would say at least once a month. At least
Okay,
once or
so if
twice a month.
someone's around someone
3
once
times
a
a
month,
month.
that's considered.
2 to 4 times a month would be the
Who
minimum.
do you consistently hang out with 2 to 4 times a month? Other than me.
I do it all the time with many people.
But based on what you're saying, I'm the only one that you love then.
No, actually, you're mistaken. I've lived all over the country and the world and spent time with multiple. I can make a list of it for you.
But you don't hang out with those people anymore.
When I in different periods of my time when I've lived in other places, I individually was present in people's lives and had intimate relationships.
But you're not maintaining that anymore then. So you
So-
really don't love them, because if I love someone, I'm going to maintain a relationship the rest of my life.
100%. But I'm not connected to them, and they're living their life, and I'm living mine. So now our intimate love and
So
connection.
you don't love them anymore?
It's not the same connection whatsoever. No, when me and Kim were spending day after day together, we developed an intimate love for each other.
You don't love that guy
and when
still?
we break apart, the love disintegrates.
How does the love disintegrate?
What are you talking about? We're not spending 12 to 20 hours a day working together 7 days a week, 6 weeks in a row in a studio, busting our ass sculpting statues.
It's a simple question. Do you still love him, though, as a friend?
I care. No, I'm not going to say I love someone that I never see.
That makes sense. But you're talking about never see. What about someone that you see on a monthly basis?
That's what I'm saying. That's the correlation, is the more you see someone and the more intimate time you spend, the more capable there is of being an intimate, deep, loving connection.
Yeah, but again, all that is...
Which leads
it's
to
all
them feeling
relative,
important to you.
Yeah, but that's all relative.
Like, I would
You can't define how often someone sees someone or how much that love is. It's all relative.
No, I can't decide
Some people
that for anyone.
No, that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm giving you a systematic way of auditing this, though. Of auditing intimacy, loving relationships, about the amount of time spent, about the effort. Like, you gave great points, dude, about effort, about presence, about accountability, about respect, about boundaries. You said all these things that make so much sense. But if it's just a phone relationship, none of that stuff is really present.
Yeah, but I don't really have just phone relationships with anybody.
I'm not talking about you as an individual in anything I say.
Yeah, but it's the situation, too, going back to what you're saying. There's just another situation that I can think of with Solomon and Dad. That's not a phone relationship. They are present in each other's lives.
Clayton Michael said, depends on the type of love. You can love the world and have unconditional love for the entire human race. But it can be hard to be intimate and show love to people from a distance. Exactly what I'm saying, Clayton. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Clayton.
That makes sense.
I think that's totally true. It's unconditional love for the entire human race, but it can be hard to be intimate and show love to people from a distance. Exactly my point, Clayton Michael. I think that's a great point. Relationships always go in and out of existence. We love many different people in life. We've fallen out of love over and over. I see what JR is saying.
But it's so fluid, dude. Like, sometimes, like, again, so what he's saying, what you're saying is, like, I can be around someone once a week and I can go months without seeing him, then I can see him again. It's like I'm avoiding them. It's just life.
But if
I don't love someone less because I didn't see him for a month. It takes two to tango. I can't force myself into someone's life if they're fucking running from me.
If Indira never would have left me, I would have chased her to the end of the world. I disagree 100%. When you meet real love, love is on.
Yeah, but she wouldn't have chased you, is my whole point.
Yeah.
You takes two to tango.
That's what I'm
you
saying.
can't chase someone around the world if they don't want to fucking be in your life, if they're not trying to come back to you. So if you look at an example with someone who's mentally ill that constantly is running away, that's not another person's fault because the person's running away. It's not your fault if you love someone so much, but they're not willing to meet you and they're trying to run away from everything. It takes two to tango.
Totally. Which
So
is
it's
why
like-
I'm going to go bring this full circle, then we'll wrap it up, is I think it comes back to my whole belief in science and understanding that our own kin are responsible for us sustaining. You can't put the responsibility of the state to take care of your own kin. If you look at what I talk about all the time on my show, folks, I talk about more life, more pain, more suffering leads to change. And unfortunately, people that are mentally ill and people that they come from more stricken circumstances or are not as fortunate, they're cursed. They're completely disadvantaged of life. If you're born as a schizoaffecta, or you're born bipolar, or you're born...
Not necessarily born, sometimes it can be developed.
Whatever, if you're born disabled in that disadvantage in life, without parenting, without quality parenting, without direction, and you're mentally ill, or you're physically disabled, you are, unfortunately, for no reason of your own, disadvantaged in life. And in our society... I think the pressure falls on the kin of that family.
Well, I actually think there's institutions that can help them, for example.
I have never seen an institution that does anything successful.
Well, Trillium is a great organization that helps people that they aren't able to live with their families, but they have support systems in a place like a group
To me,
home.
there's no situation where I'd ever want to put the decision-making of my own kin in the state's arms. If I ever have a
That's
child,
very rare. The states, you know how hard it gets? That's actually not common,
But what
bro.
we're talking about is state regulation that makes decisions for people.
You really have to fuck shit up to have that happen, though.
I just don't believe in it. What do you mean? There's many instances where the state does that and everything. With laws, zoning.
If you become a harm to
Look
society.
at the state, the government just makes decisions for us every day without
Yeah,
us
but you
deciding.
got to understand the only
They
time.
choose where we can build things, how we can build them, what color they can
But
be.
they do that for the safety of society.
They choose how much money we can
So
make.
if you committed a serious crime, that's why you're now in prison.
But I'm just talking about the auditing of the fact that the government should not be making decisions for people ever.
Josh, some people aren't capable of making sane decisions. How do you then choose that?
But the government cannot make decisions for people.
If
That
you have an
contradicts.
insane person, who's supposed to make that decision?
So you're saying if the government can force them to take pills they don't want to take, that is twisted. That is wrong. Just because I'm mentally unstable and I've made mistakes in my life, you're going to force me to eat something or do something? I completely 100% disagree with that. You can never force an individual to take a pill or take a drug. That is completely something I 100% will never agree with, no matter what that person's
That's
done.
a little extreme, though, bro. Because there are people that if they don't take that, they become violent.
Okay, well then let them become violent on the streets and get killed.
No, they're going to kill someone.
Okay?
That's why they're locked
That happens
up.
every day.
That's why they lock them up.
But there's no way the government should ever force someone to take a drug.
You can't say that so black and white. How can you not
That's
say
twisted.
someone...
We cannot have a government that tells you have to take a drug. That is wrong.
A normal citizen, no. But if you become a harm to society...
All right, so now you're a harm to society. Exactly. It's a great topic. It makes total sense. Harm to society. So now you're someone that basically has become a ward of the state, has been classified as incapable or you're completely
To make decisions.
incapable or incapacitated for your own well-being and making your own decisions. And then the society is going to sit back and say, we're capable and responsible for keeping this person alive and funding them and sustaining them, but then at the same time, we're going to force them to do certain things that we tell them they have to do, but yet they are incapable of making their own decisions. We're going to make them for them. That to me makes no sense.
But you have to understand, though, that is
That's
a last resort.
That is the opposite of American freedom, I'd say.
Yeah, but you got to understand, bro, that people that get to that point, it's not like we live in a dictator society where that happens all the time.
I disagree. I think
it is really hard to get to that point.
The government
it's
does it
not
every
easy
day for us. I disagree.
Not in that specific instance. Like when it comes
in many other instances.
I'm talking about specifically to be
with the face mask is another one. Forcing everyone to wear a mask.
You don't have to wear a mask.
Yeah, you do.
No, you don't.
They made it a state mandate.
Only if you're trying to go into.
How can the government issue laws and legislation that instantly force us to do something, and without doing it, you're punished? I completely disagree with that, 100%.
Okay, I'm not trying to talk about that issue.
People.
What I'm trying to say though is that when it comes to people that become wards of the state, that doesn't just happen overnight. That's you. It is really hard to get committed to be a ward of the state. Like you really have to do fucking fucked up. Like you just don't go out there one time and commit a crime and now you're a state of the ward. Like it takes a long time for that to happen. And
Clayton Michael says it is wrong and it happens every day in the psychiatric hospitals and even in Minnesota. The government does force patients to take medication even if they aren't necessarily violent or violating any rules, but completely psychotic. Psychosis doesn't mean they are violent. Sometimes patients get better, sometimes they get worse.
It's true.
So how could they be forced to take a medication?
It's a case-by-case basis.
That's twisted to me.
If someone's violent, though, he's stating someone sometimes they're not. I don't think if someone's not a violent threat to themselves or suicidal or anything that they should be. But if you have someone who's suicidal or a threat to someone, that's a different situation. But yeah, I don't think if someone's not that extreme, I don't think they should be forced to take something. I definitely agree with you, and it's fucked up if they do that. But
How would you ever feel loved in a state facility where they're forcing you to take a drug?
No, it's not, man.
That sounds like that. To me, that sounds like I don't have any love. I don't have any connection, and I'm just completely abandoned.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sad when that happens, bro. You act like no one wants to have anyone they know end up there.
So then you have to look back at auditing how that comes about.
But not to interject my own thing.
No,
here.
you're welcome, brother.
Let me come in here for a second. But I just want to put this out. I have been in treatments where we are not completing treatment guidelines because we're not taking our mental health meds. Even if I don't want to take it. They look at it as you are not completing the program because you're not taking the suggested mental health meds, even though they might make you feel weird for taking them.
So they won't graduate you.
They won't graduate you. So there is certain situations where someone who is not in a psychotic episode or someone, like I completely get your side, if they're a harm to themselves or others, those meds are more.
That's the only time I would agree with it. Otherwise, I do not agree with it.
But
like you guys are saying.
I know of treatment facilities and of certain programs that way to where it's not looking like you're completing the program because you are refusing your meds.
Yeah, that's
and I'll leave it at that.
That's a different
Clayton
situation.
Michael said exactly what Dell said. Clayton, that's the recovery atheist, Dell Bacon.
Excellent point, Del.
Yep.
No, I think that's great insight and perspective, and I think we're going to wrap this up shortly in the next few minutes, and it comes back to freedom and love, and I think there's a direct correlation between feeling loved and being involved in a part of something and connected to others, and that directly correlates with our freedom. Because when I have freedom, I have the ability to make choices, even if I'm classified by the government of being incapacitated, I still deserve that freedom to either completely perish and die or not sustain, or I just think freedom and love directly correlate with government and the laws and legislation that decide and choose for us, which is why I'm less government and more freedom in life. And I think that we should have great blue healthcare systems and great blue education systems, but everything else, I don't think the government in any way should make decisions for us. And I think that comes back to love and freedom and ability to connect to others. But I think it's a great episode, and there's been great dialogue. So what do you want to wrap some things up with, Zaya?
I don't have anything else. I think we touched it all. I think it's like when it comes down to love, it's about effort, and it's about honesty, accountability, and intimacy. It's about boundaries. It's about respect. I think when it comes down to respecting people, as long as we're doing our best to love someone and not put them down, I think that's the key. I think a lot of times when people don't feel loved, it's either they're being ignored or they're being talked down to like they're a piece of shit, you're a fucking loser, like that kind of stuff that you see people shame someone, I guess. So shaming is a good word that I've heard Dell talk about as a recovery atheist. So I think that is, as long as people aren't shaming and talking down and ignoring people, I think if they can try to do those things, those other things, that's how love. And some people are just better at it than others. We're all humans, but it takes practice. Like it's taken me years to practice these things to get better. But I get resentful. I get irritated by people. I get annoyed by people. When I'm the kind of guy where very little people call me and ask me how my day is. I'm the guy calling people. People are calling me, asking me for stuff all the time.
You get mad.
All the time. So it's not. You have to train yourself to not be someone who gets resentful and not be someone like that. Like I train myself to be of service. I train myself to practice these boundaries. But if you're not and you're human like I am, there can be times when you can be sick of like, oh wow, if you start to take other people's inventory, I'm doing more in this relationship than the other person. I give way more than they give me.
Yes, but I just want to wrap it up with a little dialogue on this, and after everything that we've talked about, I'm going to read the sentence of unconditional love. Unconditional love is known as affection without any limitations or love without any prerequisites or conditions, which completely contradicts everything we just said.
What?
You just said that all these factors and limitations and conditions and standards for love, and I completely think unconditional love is the answer. I think unconditional love is the answer for our kin and our family and our kind. Unconditional love is exactly what I wanted to finish with after all this, is that creating all these standards for loving others is where you're building barriers of connection. You're coming up with standards and prerequisites and barriers.
Well, how does that contradict what we were saying?
Unconditional love. That's what love is.
Well, what did we say that was contradicting that?
You came up with all these, we talked about all these factors that help correlate to
I'm giving
love.
you, that doesn't contradict, I'm giving you factors of how to carry that out and to do that.
But unconditional love.
That's a very vague ambiguity statement. I'm giving you
unconditional
specific.
love is the most powerful love. You're not judging,
agree.
You're not creating barriers, you're not creating standards. You're just loving someone for loving them.
Of course, and
not putting any characteristics or standards on it.
No, but I'm telling you how I carry that out. I carry that out through effort, through respect. If I'm not giving you effort and respect, I'm not giving you unconditional love. That's how I carry that out.
Yeah, but you also just on the other end of it said that in order. Yeah, it goes both ways.
I wasn't contradicting at all. My statement was giving you very specific action examples of how I believe I carry out unconditional love. There is no condition on those things. Those are the things that I do no matter how the person treats me. That's unconditional, what I'm talking about there. I'm giving them respect. I'm giving them boundaries. I'm giving them my effort. I'm giving them my intimacy and my honesty and my accountability. That's all how you carry out that statement.
Yeah, but if you force those on others, then you're not unconditionally loving them.
I don't force that on anyone.
You're conditionally loving them if you force them to follow that.
No, I'm not forcing them to follow that. I'm saying that's how we carry that out. If I'm doing that and they're not doing that, guess who's practicing unconditional love? Me, not them. So my side of the street's clean. That's how I don't take other people's inventory. Because if I'm doing this, I do not ever force someone to do that. But I am aware of that.
Because when I love someone, I love them for their imperfections. That's what I've learned. With Indira, I loved her so much that when I started to realize that I loved her for her shortcomings and defects.
Of course, but that's how I'm saying. But that's how you keep your side of the street clean, because as you're doing these things and you're practicing unconditional love, no matter what happens or what that person says, your side of the street's clean because you did what you could to practice unconditional love. And sometimes it still doesn't work out. That's how you
Totally.
practice leadership and practice this love. Like, that's how you practice unconditional love, is you're always giving effort, you're always giving respect, you're always creating boundaries, you're always creating intimacy and honesty and accountability, you're always creating gratitude. It doesn't mean that other person's going to reciprocate that. But I also feel like when you do those things, if the person never reciprocates that, you owe it to yourself, because it can get really unhealthy with codependency when someone tries to do that and the other person's just using them, manipulating them. There has to be a point in time where you have to create that boundary.
It comes down to someone doing the best they can and loving them where they are.
Yeah, but I also believe in that.
If someone's severely mentally ill or someone's incapable of doing certain things and they're still putting in some effort, you have to love someone for where they are.
You have to meet them where they're at. Exactly. I've said that like 3 times. So,
yeah, you did.
But there does come a point in time, and this is more prevalent in intimate relationships, like with sexual, is you have to cut someone off sometimes because you're doing all that and they're using you, manipulating you, and it's not good. I see it all the time, and people can't get out of a relationship. They get stuck in this unhealthy physical and verbally abusive relationship because one person's doing this, and they just keep doing that and letting the other person beat them down, and they become a doormat. So
in my experience, I just want to wrap it up with the fact that the most love I've ever felt is when someone is there for me on a daily basis. When someone shows up in my life on a daily, consistent basis, whatever it is, they are showing up in my life and they are supporting me with just, even if it's just emotional support. They're showing up and they're saying, you're doing good, you're trying your best, you look great, you're healthy. They're supportively pushing you and pushing you and pushing you. That doesn't require any phone call. That doesn't require any money. That doesn't require any gift buying, any purchasing of items. It just requires showing up and simply being present, because the number one sign of love is being present in someone else's life on a daily, consistent basis.
And you can only audit yourself and how you do that, and not other people.
I'm not talking about other people right now. I'm talking about the concept.
Me too. But what I'm saying is, bringing it back to that concept, is we can't judge other people doing that. You can only audit ourselves and how we've done that. Because I can tell you right now, the second I start thinking about other people and not myself, I'm already judging them, and I'm not doing my own inventory about how I failed and have failed to do that.
But let's bring it.
Let's
bring it full circle though, and understand folks. The majority of people in America they're addicted. So if you look at addicts, their ego run rampant is what we talk about. It's ego run rampant. And we just said, if you read the book, Ego is Your Enemy, ego keeps you from connecting to others. And in order to love someone, you have to connect to them. So if you look at the most of America, they're addicted to speed and they're addicted to friction-free living. And in turn, their ego runs rampant. They have never had a self-inventory or run a program of self-auditing. So as a matter of fact, if you look at this, it leads to us to understand the fact is most of Americans can't really love other people if they're incapable of loving themselves or understanding their wants, needs, and desires, or their capabilities and their strengths and their weaknesses to be able to connect to other people. That's what the book says. That's what science says based on if you read the books and read the things. And that's the facts.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. If you're caught up with yourself, you never can be out of yourself to help someone.
It's impossible.
If you're just thinking about yourself,
it's selfish. You're self-absorbed. You're impossible. You're never going to be able to show up and love someone in another relationship and unconditionally support someone or support.
But I don't really know anyone that is amazing at loving unconditionally. It's not an easy thing to do. So I never judge anyone else's ability to do that, because I don't think a lot of people are great at it, because it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. I've gotten really good at it, better than most people. But it's still not easy to do. Come on, if loving people unconditionally was so fucking easy, we'd all be the Dalai Lama.
No, I'm not talking about how easy it is. You just made a statement previously, though, that looking, like you talked about how we can't judge other people and they're loving. But if you look at the principles of our society that is consumed with ego, and egos run rampant in America, the ability for us to love is almost non-existent.
I wouldn't describe it as non-existent.
If ego is run rampant, it's almost impossible to have love present.
There's lots of people that
Either
love
you're living in love or you're living in ego and fear and insecurities. That's all. That's what I want to wrap it up with. I think it's really hard to love someone in a country that is consumed by ego, fear, and insecurities, and they're incapable of loving others. And I think that's a big part of why we have so much distrust, so much lack of loyalty, so much lack of healthy connection in our nation right now, and so much disruption and so much basically on the verge of war. So I think it's a primary example of ego run rampant and the inability to love others.
Well, I don't think those people are unable to love others. They just have to realize that they're stuck in hate because they're letting their ego take over. They're not incapable. They're incapable, like you said, in that
Currently.
moment.
Yes, yeah.
But at any moment, that can happen in a second.
Totally, for any
Ego
of us.
can dude. It's not. They're not
100%.
incapable. They're incapable while their ego is run rampant. But I believe everybody is capable of getting out of ego and doing that. And that's what it starts with. More Love Nation is doing that. So we're getting kind of long here, and I know
Yeah, we're gonna wrap it
we
up.
have another episode that I'm guessing the Recovery Atheist wants to swing in here. But I have hope that anyone can do these things. But it starts with the audit that my brother says that we talk about. Then you can focus on yourself and not judge others and realize where you have failed and how you are flawed, and then how you can be better.
Studious self-assessment is where it all begins.
That's all it is.
Studious self-assessment.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks for listening. Once again, nothing is right, nothing is wrong. It is simply
Our perspective.
Fire.
Fire.